Yo, what's going on, everybody? Scotty Boots here, back again with another video, and we're going to talk about the book of Boba Fett and really get into why this show exists. What was the point of the book of Boba Fett? And before we go into this here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up here, comment down below. We'd love to know your thoughts on the series or specific moments within the show. I'm going to just be bouncing back and forth with the entire show here, and a lot of focus probably on the season finale with everything. But, ultimately, I was so let down as a whole by what they did with Boba Fett. Like so many of us Star Wars fans out there, we've been waiting, 40 years practically for Boba Fett, and some of us aren't even 40 years old. I'm not yet, but it's just the legacy of that character and what that character did in such a short amount of screen time. And really, the only person that could stand up and say something to Darth Vader that Darth Vader had to swallow and acknowledge, this character was so mysterious, so badass. And when they brought him back to use in The Mandalorian Season 2, was, in my opinion, just flawless and perfect. And I was like, dude, this is fantastic. This is Boba Fett. I loved everything they did. The thing that's disappointing with this more than anything is the most badass Boba Fett moment that we got, period, in my opinion, was the post-credit scene for Mando Season 2 to lead us into this year. When Fennec shows up and Boba Fett shows up and Bib Fortuna is, trying to plead his case and welcome him in, and Boba just blasts him down and takes the throne, and you get that last shot of Boba and Fennec right there in Jabba's palace. That was beautiful. That, to me, was a Boba Fett moment, and that specific moment right there was more badass and more of a Boba Fett type moment than we got throughout this entire series. So, why does this show even exist if we're not going to do anything with the character? I don't feel at all with where we left Boba Fett and started with Boba Fett that we got anything. If anything, what this show did more than anything else was gave us that backstory and some amazing visuals to go back and see really what happened from the Sarlacc pit and how he got brought through the Tusken Raiders. And we got to see such an amazing thing with the Tusken Raiders, how they're just people trying to survive and just very much about their tribe with everything. I thought that was really cool how they did all of that. The flashback stuff was great. After they went through all the flashback stuff, I really felt what they should have done with that is just consolidated that to one episode, and then he wakes up in the bacta tank, and then we carry on. The fact that they kept going back to that stuff, in my opinion, I think it ultimately showed they weren't confident enough in where they were going to carry this story present with Boba Fett, so they had to give us a little bit of that in each episode to kind of keep things going, keep us invested, because what they did with Boba Fett, present day within the show, I thought was just god-awful. Every single time Boba Fett speaks his mind with anything, he is immediately undermined either by Fennec or some other supporting character, and you don't ever see him establish himself. He doesn't have to be feared. I can respect what they wanted to do to have him rule with dignity and people, want to get behind him and not have people living in fear. I thought that would have been a really good arc, but you still have to establish yourself as being that figure. If every single person can undermine what you're trying to do and have an alternative opinion that you don't put your foot down with and you just eventually cave to that, it just makes you not respected, and people are going to do what they're going to do anyways. And the perfect example of this, and these characters sucked anyways, but the whole modded characters on Tatooine, Boba Fett's walking up. You're talking about who is described as the most feared bounty hunter. That armor, that helmet has meaning, has purpose, has a presence to it. If you're walking up on the sands of Tatooine through Mos Espa, and you're telling me one of these modded characters is going to stand up to that character, Boba Fett, and say, yeah, I know who you are, and kind of talk down, and Boba's response to that is to say, essentially, you've got courage, I respect that. Dude, get the hell out of here with that. That is just absolutely ridiculous. If Boba Fett has that presence in general, people shouldn't be talking to him the way that they were talking to him in this regardless. But even if you're going to do that, you have to have some kind of a counter move or a counterbalance to that to put that character, that person in their place so you can get that respect. I wasn't a big fan of how they treated him like that throughout this entire series. There was not one moment in this entire series where Boba Fett made a decision that stood ground and had people respect him. Every single thing that happened was tying around him. He was being undermined. Everything got undercut. Was not a fan of that. He did not establish himself as a leader. Fennec would have been the perfect person to be in that role, and Boba Fett be the muscle behind Fennec, because Fennec was the one who was ready to get shit done the entire series. So that was disappointing. Now, these mod characters on Tatooine, what was the point of all of that? I am so sick of them fleshing out Tatooine. I really hope we're not going to get more of that with the Obi-Wan series. When we see Luke on Tatooine, it is a desert, desolate, depressing planet, and you got moisture farmers, you've got scum, villainy. We know it, right? That's what we saw. That's what it is. The Tusken Raiders are scary people living amongst in the sands, riding their banthas. We know what Tatooine is. Where do these mod characters come into play with this here? I have no problem with those characters in Star Wars. It just does not fit for Tatooine. They're so poor that they're stealing water, but they have these ridiculous, little speeder things that just are slow as molasses, don't fit in with anything. These characters are good for something like Coruscant or like Canto Bight. You know what I mean? It does not make sense for these characters to be on Tatooine. I don't know why we had to get established with them here. Why was Luke so desperate to leave Tatooine if there were all these other options in this nightlife that was out there? Why weren't you out there experiencing that kind of stuff then? It undercuts the whole idea of what living on Tatooine is. So I was not a big fan of that there. Even when you get into Mos Espa episode 1, which is clearly bigger, more established than what Mos Eisley is with everything, it still had that feel. We're people living amongst the desert. It is not the ideal style of life. There were slaves and all this crazy shit going on Tatooine. But in the meantime, you've got these kids running around just modding and upgrading and all this stuff, and none of it even played into the show at all. I was waiting, when these mod people are out here getting attacked by the Pikes, they're all hiding, and nobody's using any of these mods to do something that would give them an edge over the Pikes. It was just gunpowder versus gunpowder in the end. So they weren't even utilized. So the whole thing just turned to shit. So, stepping back a little bit here, with the Sarlacc pit as well. Boba Fett goes back to the Sarlacc pit thinking he lost his armor there. Okay, could make sense, but the issue with that is when we're watching these flashback sequences, that's not the filmmakers giving us flashbacks. We're watching flashbacks as we're inside Boba Fett's memory in the Bacta tank. That's what he's dreaming about. So everything we're seeing is him recollecting this while being in the Bacta tank. That was the whole point of the Bacta tank. We see Boba Fett emerge from the Sarlacc pit and get taken away and stripped down, and we see all that happen. So if he's recollecting this while in the Bacta tank, being inside the Sarlacc pit and getting out of the Sarlacc pit with his armor on, where do you come up with going back to the Sarlacc pit? To me, that was a huge, huge plot hole with that right there. It was an amazing scene, and I feel like that's a lot of the stuff we got in this show. A lot of great visual kinds of things, especially in the season finale. Beautiful visuals with everything, but narratively just makes absolutely no sense. So, and a lot of fans will settle for that. I'm not one of them. I want a story to follow. That's why I fell in love with Star Wars. I didn't fall in love with Star Wars, just because, oh man, Darth Vader, that looks cool. Oh my gosh, we're out in space. That's really cool. Oh wow, light speed, so cool. I fell in love with Star Wars because it was an amazing story. And then what amplifies that story is the fact that it has the greatest score of all time. It has the greatest characters of all time, the greatest set designs, the ships, the costumes, everything about it. It's just the perfect package. But the story is why we keep going back. You don't go and look at Luke Skywalker staring off to the twin suns on Tatooine and get emotional because the story sucks. You're already vested in this character. The score is taking you through this journey as you're watching this character stare off. It's beautiful, man. You get sucked into that, and that's the entire story of Star Wars. You don't get emotional when Luke Skywalker throws his lightsaber and gets blasted by the Emperor with lightning, ready to die because he believed that much in his father, that there was that sliver of good. He believed that much that he was willing to take death for his father to then turn back to the light side and rescue his son. I mean, that's not bullshit. That's a beautiful story that we're vested in, and it just happens to be surrounded with the most amazing characters ever created. That's why we love Star Wars. so much in this here. There's no story. There was nothing narrative. There's beautiful visuals and a lot of great things with that. But outside of the flashback stuff that we got with Boba Fett, with him in the Bacta tank and the Tusken Raiders and the Sarlacc and all that, I did not care for anything they did with Boba Fett to try and progress him throughout the series as it was labeled in present day. And I feel like the way that this was structured out showed that there was a lack of confidence in that, because this turned into a full-blown Mandalorian season 2.5 for 2.5 of these episodes. And ultimately, it was kind of the last 3. Even the season finale to this here was very much just Mando infused with everything. So those episodes 5 and 6, without a doubt, were the absolute best of this entire series. And what does that tell you? You know what I mean? You're relying on bringing in Mando to save the Boba Fett series. So what's the point of the Boba Fett series then if you had to digress and go to these episodes? It meant you did not have enough confidence in bringing Boba Fett in his own series that you had to remind your audience of, hey, Mandalorian's still here. Hey, here's Luke Skywalker. Here's Grogu. We can't wait till a Mando season 3. We got to give this stuff now. That's a bummer that they did that. I loved everything they did in these episodes. Don't get me wrong. They were amazing. I just don't like the fact that I have to go back and watch the Book of Boba Fett. Or not that I have to watch the whole series to get to those episodes, but to see those 2 episodes, you have to go into the Book of Boba Fett. I don't like that. It doesn't fit there. They could have brought Mando in. They could have saved all of this for Mando season 3. I thought it would have been beautiful. If you wanted to leave a perfect teaser for this, you could have even had Ahsoka pop in. Him and Ahsoka and Mando walk to go see where Luke and Grogu are. You get that silhouette, beautiful shot off in the distance with them, and he gives the gift to Ahsoka, goes back to take care of business, and you didn't have to write Grogu into the season finale to get us all more vested into this here. We could have saved that for a Mando season 3, and you still could have used Mando in here. You just didn't write Boba Fett good enough to where you were confident with that character carrying this through, and that's a bummer. Those 2 episodes, absolutely amazing. And the Mando is the only one who does anything bounty hunter-esque in this entire series here. And it's when we get the introduction back to him in episode 5, The Return of the Mandalorian. They give us full-blown bounty hunter action for that initial, interaction and bringing Mando back in the beginning of that episode. That was bounty hunter work right there. We got to see it from that character, not from the one that we've been wanting to see that from. So I could probably go on and on ranting about a lot of this here, but I'm going to go into the season finale and talk about this, because the season finale for me just fell flat and fell apart in so many spots. They brought in Cad Bane, which was super cool. I'm not even versed in everything animated. I know a lot of the core stuff, and I've seen a good portion of it, but I definitely have not seen all the animated stuff for like the Filoni-verse with all that. But I know Cad Bane. I know the presence of that character, and I know that character is ridiculously badass. And the way that they brought that character in, you could not have given that character a more perfect entrance than just seeing that hazy silhouette in the background slowly walking in. And when you get that shot of Timothy the Elephant walking and the camera's tracking with him and you just see Cad Bane in the background, I mean, that was pitch perfect. Absolutely amazing. I wish they would have used Cad Bane a little bit more in this, because if you don't know Cad Bane, if you're just casually watching this and it's just like, oh, wow, look at this badass who showed up, completely wasted. Now, if you know the whole backstory to that, it gives you more of a satisfying payoff. But where I think they really messed up with this bad is they should have made Cad Bane the killer of the Tusken Raiders. Why would you not have, written that in to where he reveals to Boba that he's the one who killed the Tusken Raiders? That would have given at least more purpose to what that final standoff was between them. It would have created a little bit more of an emotional element to when Boba has to use the gaffy stick to take him out. That would have been total justice to the situation there. It was still very cool how Boba did that. Really, the only cool thing that Boba did throughout the entire series was the way that he kind of dodged the blaster, used the gaffy stick, and, took Cat out. I thought that was done very well. I just, it would have had more emotional weight to it if it was justice with the gaffy stick, not just him doing it for, the people that took him in and saved him, but did that for the people that took him in and saved him who were also murdered by Cad Bane, who he's sticking the gaffy stick into. That would have had more emotional impact, especially to a random, casual, viewer who does not know any backstory to Boba Fett and Cad Bane. That would have sealed the deal, would have went over a lot better. Now, the other thing that was a big issue with this was this whole war that we were building up to. We got credits. Well, credits by a muscle. Well, let's go get the muscle. What a missed opportunity to bring in like a Bosk or, a Dengar or Forlom or Zuckuss, or even if you wanted to bring IG-88, even though we just had IG-11, any of them. You could have done something so cool to get the band back together, or at least one or two of them, just for that additional muscle for this here. But the problem was the threat wasn't even that big of a threat. There was no threat. The Pikes were just a bunch of random foot soldiers like putties from Power Rangers with blasters. How the hell was this the threat that they were worried about? Cad doesn't even show up and do anything in the season finale outside of his standoff with Boba. Like, why is Cad not out there just wrecking house, Where's the other muscle? Who's the leader to this here? There was nothing bigger and bolder and badder that, in my opinion, was any pose of a threat. So what a missed opportunity to even have a threat with this here. That shit drove me nuts. The whole war started out of nowhere, too. When they go back to Mos Espa and they're sitting within, the cantina area that just got bombed. Again, Boba Fett getting undermined yet again. Like, here, this is the plan. This is what we're going to go do. No, this is what we need to do. All right, fine, we'll stay. It's like, oh my gosh, dude. Like, don't even write this in then. Have Boba be the one that makes, the stance that we're going to stay here and hold ground. But then all the Pikes start showing up and just start shooting. It's just like, this is it? This is the war? Like, this, it was so underwhelming. There was nothing big and bold or anything about this. So I was not vested in anything with this. I didn't feel like there were consequences. Didn't feel like we had characters to care about. There was just nothing going on that had any substantial weight to it. And the Pikes just showing up with blasters. How the hell did Boba and Mando not take them out? If you would have stuck Obi-Wan Kenobi out there, episode 2 Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's going to take these Pike out like that. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's going to wipe the slate clean. Jango Fett held his own against Obi-Wan using all of his different tech on the suit with the jetpack and maneuvered around him and got the best of Obi-Wan. How does that happen? But Obi-Wan would have went out there and taken these random foot soldiers out. You're telling me Boba and Mando, their best plan was to send out one of the worst characters in Star Wars who had a slight redeeming moment based on that conversation when he's out there talking to the Pike, but he's reading off of the tablet. You're telling me he doesn't look at that before going out there? He's just reading it randomly for the first time right there. You would have read that quick and then went out there and tried to do something about that. But nevertheless, he goes out there as a distraction, and the plan was for Boba and Mando to finally come out using their jetpacks, but not to any substantial use. They come out with their jetpacks and they're just kind of sitting right here. You got this whole line of Pike shooting down, and they're right here just hovering. And it's just like, you've got jetpacks. Why are you not taking these guys out one-on-one? Take the jetpacks, work your way around. If you sent him out there as a distraction and you had a plan, why did you show up right in the front of the line of fire? You could have came right from behind, and it would have been a badass scene. Could have snuck from behind and came right down this way while they're all facing him and just take everybody out just like that. And then you still could have had an additional wave of Pike show up after that and start gunning them down. Maybe they were not expecting it, but man, you made them look kind of weak in that scene. In my opinion, you kind of made them look a little bit weak, and we didn't get the badass moment that I feel it really should have been. Then you got Grogu showing up. Apparently, Luke says, well, if you're going to choose the path with the Mando and you want to be the foundling and you're going to put on the chainmail, I'm just going to send you alone in my X-Wing. R2 will get you back to Tatooine. Did we forget about the fact that Moff Gideon and the remnants of the Empire are trying to still get their hands on Grogu and use his blood? Maybe Moff Gideon's locked up somewhere. We'll find out, but that doesn't change the fact that there were multiple people looking for the child, wanting that blood. How in the hell would Luke show up and take out all the Death Troopers to save Grogu and take him back and bring him to train him, but if that's not going to continue, he's going to send him alone on his own and risk him falling into the hands of somebody else and not getting directly back to Mando. That didn't seem in character for me at all. It seemed like the very weak way just to get Grogu back to Tatooine to reunite with Mando, and it wasn't well thought out to me. The moment was beautiful, don't get me wrong. Like when Grogu and Mando, when he jumped into his arms, man, it shook tears out of me, no doubt, but the way that we got to that just didn't make any sense to me. Then we've got Boba Fett showing up on the Rancor. We're back to awesome visuals, badass moments, but just make no sense in a narrative sense at all. Where in the fuck is the Slave One while all of this is going on? You're telling me Boba Fett thought it was a better idea to jump on the Rancor and bring the Rancor into Mos Espa, which caused more damage to the city than the fucking Pike did anyways, and was a bigger threat to the city in the end, than get the Slave One and just gun everybody down the same way that he gunned down, oh god, I can't think of the crew, but the crew that was like taking down like the moisture farms and stuff. How in the fuck, dude, did that make any sense to them writing that down? It looked awesome, but it doesn't make sense in a narrative sense, man. Like, Boba Fett would have gotten the Slave One and showed up and just gunned everybody down from the get-go. If they wanted to make the Pike look scary and do something to make this personal across the board, you should have had the Pike blow up the Slave One, or have Cad Bane blow up the Slave One. As much as I would not want to see that ship go, I mean, it would be painstaking, but that would have been a moment, just a perfect moment to make it very personal for Boba, not just him wanting to protect Mos Espa and get this out of here with the spice running and stuff. It would have made it personal, and then it would have made it more personal knowing that Cad Bane killed the Tuskens on top of that, and it would have at least justified why he had to ride a Rancor. I don't have my ship anymore. The ship's gone. You assholes blew it up. Now I'm going to take my Rancor in. And it would have at least made sense as to why the Rancor all of a sudden gets privilege over the Slave One. And then when the Rancor runs off, it's just destroying the city. Like, what the hell is going on? And then even after Boba takes Cad Bane out, why is he not just taking his jetpack and flying off and getting back on top of the Rancor to get control of that situation again? Mando's out here trying to take care of it, and then Grogu's the one who has to put the Rancor down. So, like, what happens if Grogu's not there? What if Grogu chose Yoda's lightsaber? What if Grogu doesn't get there in time for this battle with anything? Like, what does this Rancor do then? Where's Boba Fett to take care of the Rancor? You know, there's no way in hell that he doesn't hear this going on. He's literally right there. Just took Cad Bane out. Now this Rancor is running rampant. Where's Boba on his jetpack to just fly back on top of the Rancor and settle it down? Made absolutely no sense. It was nothing more than an excuse to bring Grogu in, and it was a great moment. Again, it just didn't make sense narratively with what's going on in the episode. So, again, really good stuff visually and great moments, but they just didn't have the same kind of impact because within the story, I just didn't care what was going on outside of what was happening with the Mando and Grogu. Those were the only characters I was vested in and really caring about with what was happening here. Everything else was just, you know, eye candy as much as they could make it be, trying to salvage what was a pointless thing. So why does the Book of Boba Fett exist? What was the point of this show? We end the show, the last shot that we get in this show is of Mando and Grogu. It's Boba Fett's show, and the last shot we get is of Mando and Grogu. Then they bring us into this ridiculous post-credits scene. This might have been the most embarrassed I have ever been for Star Wars in my life when they brought this post-credits scene up. They allude to someone using the Bacta tank. And at first, you're thinking it's Chrysanthemum because it was already kind of brought up that Chrysanthemum was going to get in the Bacta. But then you see Chrysanthemum standing right there with everybody, and you're like, all right, it's not him. They could have left that very ambiguous. You don't have to do a post-credits scene. You know, there could have been speculation. Okay, who's in the Bacta tank? Oh, Timothy Olyphant, maybe. Maybe Boba kept Cad Bane around. You know, like there could have been some different things to just let that be ambiguous. Let us speculate. Let people go crazy talking about it. That would have been great. But no, they have to give us the post-credit scene to show Timothy Olyphant in there, which is ridiculously underwhelming. If you're gonna do that, just put it in the show. We don't have to see a post-credit scene for that. Great. Timothy Olyphant's coming back. That's what you want to leave me with to get excited for a Book of Boba Fett Season 2, if it even comes around. But that's what they give us. And then to take it a step further and rub salt in the wound and add insult to injury, then they have to show the mod guy show up and hey, you know what? Here's what we want you to do. Turn around, just kind of look like you're badass and ready to go, and that's how we're going to close this out and get people juiced up and ready to see more. Ridiculously embarrassing, dude. The mod stuff was terrible as it is, and if there's one thing I could give two shits about less would be Timothy Olyphant getting modded, and that's what's going to get me pumped up for a Book of Boba Fett Season 2. That is just ridiculous. So, man, this did turn into more of a rant. I didn't hate everything that went on in here. Like I said, the flashback stuff was cool. I could probably just keep going and going and going because there's so much more that, you know, if I just kept talking, more is going to keep coming in my head with this here. The flashback things, seeing Boba get brought up to present, I thought was all done well. I enjoyed that stuff. Some of it a little bit more than other things, but overall, that stuff was very enjoyable. Everything with Mando and Grogu and Luke and Ahsoka and seeing all of that was just phenomenal. And then the stuff with Boba Fett, from where we were present with him, moving forward to where we left this whole thing off by the end of this season finale, was just so disappointing. I can't believe that they felt this was the story that needed to be told. I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. And if you didn't have it ready and you weren't confident enough, you should have waited and just done something else. You did not have to push this out. And if you had something, why did we get this? I just don't understand. I don't understand how this is the story. They all sat down and started spitballing ideas, or Jon Favreau had the idea, and then they just went, boom, this is what we're going to do. This is Boba Fett. This is what we want to give the fans. Makes no sense to me. The whole thing just absolutely made zero sense. I'm sick of seeing Tatooine fleshed out. We need to get the hell off of Tatooine. There's so much more out there. We know Tatooine. Please, Obi-Wan, like, do not flesh Tatooine out anymore. We get it. All right. So that's my my rant. This went on a little bit long, well, quite a bit longer. I was trying to keep this to like 10 or 15 minutes, but here we are. So hopefully this was entertaining at least, and I hope you know, either you share some of these feelings, or if you've got completely opposite feelings, I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Leave comments again down below. Super curious. And I'm a huge mark for Star Wars. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm willing to make any kind of excuse for anything to help it make sense for me, because I love Star Wars and this galaxy, you know, so much, you know, so I'm willing to make excuses for anything if it can make sense. There was just so much in this that was unforgivable and did not make any sense. So I can't even make an excuse to help myself digest it differently. And that's why I didn't do this video the night of the premiere or the season finale. I could have easily just hopped on here and just went batshit crazy shit talking stuff, but I was like, I'm gonna let this digest for a week just to see if I feel differently about anything, or if I can justify things for myself to make excuses to help, like, come to terms with what some of these choices were. And the more I've thought about it, the more I've kind of thought about things, the more I'm finding that just I didn't like and didn't make sense. So that's where I'm at with it. I'm going to wrap it up here before I keep going on and on and on, and then I start repeating myself with things. So again, thank you guys. If you made it this far, I appreciate it. And I hope you found things to enjoy out of this. I don't want this to be like a total hate thing. It just was not for me in the end, outside of the amazing shit that, you know, we did get with Mando and Grogu in the flashback. So that will do it. Thank you guys for watching. If you're new to the channel, again, hit that subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up, comment down below, and we will see you in the next video.